in, Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of Vikings on SI right here on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Will Ragatz and Joe Nelson. Boys, happy Friday. That means we're 2 days away from the next Vikings game, and it's time. Just like Thursdays are time for 5 key matchups, Fridays are time for our Friday predictions for this game coming up. Vikings at Packers, a big NFC North border battle. Joe, I'll start with you since you're always the most anticipated prediction of the week. Let's get your prediction right off the bat here.
Well, why is it the most anticipated?
I always look forward to it. That's why it's most
Because
anticipated.
you like accuracy or
Sure, if that's what you want to call it.
Okay, here we go. Vikings 27, Packers 13. Uh,
Ooh, I like it.
I've been spinning my head around this all week and thinking, it's another rough and tumble border battle. This is, the blood and guts, the black and the blue. This is going to be as tough as it gets, no matter when they play or how good the rosters are. It's going to be a close matchup. Things are different, guys. I keep going back to this. I just don't feel the same as I have any other time the Vikings have been around, and I'm trying to diagnose why that is, and I've come to the conclusion that it's because the coaching is just so superior to anything that's been here in the past, offensively, even special teams, but the primarily on defense. Um, if you're Jordan Love and you're talking to the media throughout the week and you're admitting that you literally have no idea what the Vikings are running until you snap the ball, you're at a significant disadvantage. You're aware of that, and immediately you're backed into a corner. And I don't care if you're playing at home or if you're playing on the road, unless you get a big lead on this Vikings defense, on this Vikings team, I just don't see how that is going to change. And if Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy can't figure it out, and if CJ Stroud can't figure it out, Daniel Jones can't figure it out. Jones, by the way, is completing a lot of his passes since he faced Minnesota. I don't know if you've noticed. He doesn't look quite so bad all of a sudden. Something tells me that this Vikings defense is different and it's elite. And I just don't know how the Packers are going to overcome it. So, yeah, I have the Vikings going into Lambeau Field. It's going to be great weather. You don't have to worry about the cold. There's not going to be any rain. And taking down the Packers in a pretty big statement victory, which will be their third consecutive. So, I don't know how you guys see it, but that's the way I'm looking at it this week.
I like it. Will?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one all week, and like echoing some of the things Joe said. It's Lambeau Field. It's a rivalry game. It's always like I'm fighting the thoughts in my head of, can this Vikings team keep playing like this week after week after week? Is there going to be and at some point I do think they're going to not play as well. I just don't know if that's going to happen this week. I think the Packers are a good team. They I think they're going to get Jordan Love back, even if he's not at 100%. We saw what he's capable of doing last year. They've got a lot of weapons. They're leading the league in rushing yards per game. They're leading the league in turnover margin and takeaways on defense. Xavier McKinney, their free agent acquisition, has an interception in every game. Jair Alexander has a couple picks. The defensive front, as usual, is pretty stout. But with all that said, I'm just going to keep picking the Vikings until they give me a reason with their play on Sundays to question that, because they have put together 3 games of some of the best tape that we've seen from the Vikings in a long time on both sides of the ball. Even their special teams are playing really well. I agree. I think it comes down to coaching in a lot of ways, like the Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores duo. I saw somebody tweet this week, like, how many offense and defensive coaching duos would you take over them? It might literally just be Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo, who they get the benefit of the doubt, having won the last 2 Super Bowls. I'm not sure there's another duo out there that I would take over O'Connell and Flores. The coaches Vikings coaches since I've been following the team have been like Mike Tice and Brad Childress and Leslie Frazier and Mike Zimmer. It's just, this is head and shoulders. I wasn't around for Bud Grant, but maybe this is what that felt like, because the coaching is just unbelievable. The game plans, the way they have their players ready to play. That's my long rambling intro to say Vikings 30, Packers 24 on Sunday at Lambeau Field.
I love that. You know, and on that point, like Mike Zimmer was beloved when he first got here, but he ran out of gas with the roster, with the fan base, with obviously Rick Spielman, everybody, even Paul Allen, the play-by-play announcer, he has a grudge against. So he was a great coach, but then this week Rex Ryan goes on ESPN Radio in New York, and he's making it pretty clear that Zimmer's style of play doesn't match up well with the intense pre-snap motions that the NFL is running these days. It's like he's outlived his coaching cycle, and the time it would have been successful. It's just not working anymore. Yeah, they looked okay on Thursday Night Football against the Giants and limited them to I think 15 points or whatever, but when Rex Ryan is ripping somebody from his era and saying this guy's not adjusting, I mean, yeah, there's not many coaches out there that are as modern and influenced by the way the game is played today as the two guys running the show in Minnesota on offense and defense. And then, Will, you made a really good point. Yeah, the Packers, Xavier McKinney looks really good, and they lead the league in turnovers with 9 or whatever. They run the ball really well, but context matters in those points as well, because Jalen Hurts has led the league through 3 weeks in turnover-worthy plays. They faced him in week number 1. Xavier McKinney got him. Then you had Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, who are both top 5 in turnover-worthy plays. These are not efficient quarterbacks, and it's going to result in a lot of turnovers. So that's benefited the Packers. And then, of course, when you don't have Jordan Love, you throw the ball 17 times a game rather than 30-plus times a game for a 2-week period against 2 atrocious football teams. So, I mean, the Packers definitely look good, and I believe they are a very good football team. I just don't know how you can overcome the scheme that Minnesota's throwing at them this week. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, the Vikings, I think, are really kind of on the cutting edge in the NFL with their coaching, with their schemes, and they're not reacting to what the rest of the league is doing and then trying to catch up. Like they're out here setting trends and forcing the rest of the league to catch up to them, and I think that's a really good place to be. A lot of innovation, particularly on defense, but I mean O'Connell is right there with all the motion and the deception, and I mean he got Jalen Naylor wide open for touchdowns in weeks 1 and 2 based on his play design. So yeah, it's the coaching staff is really impressive. You're right. I think the Packers, who they've played, matters. I do think it's a good team, and I think Lambeau Field is a tough place to play. I just have more confidence in the Vikings from top to bottom as a football team, and to be able to go in there and get this done. And it's going to come down to Sam Darnold, as we say most weeks. And Sam Darnold's played really well through the first 3 games of the season, but he has to take care of the ball in this game. There's been a few moments this year. I mean, there was the pick by Warner. There was last week he was trying to avoid a sack and shoveled it underhand to Aaron Jones, and probably shouldn't have done that. He's got to take care of the ball in this game against a ball hawking Packers secondary, and if he's able to do that, I think Aaron Jones is gonna be in line for a big game, because the Packers are bottom half of the league in run defense DVOA so far, and then I think Justin Jefferson, all the talk of him and Jair Alexander. He's never had a big game at Lambeau Field, Jefferson. So that's something I'm looking for this week, because he only has 14 receptions so far. He's averaging fewer than 5 a game, largely because the Vikings have been blowing teams out, and you can only get 1 reception when you go 97 yards on a drive. So
that's true.
I think Jefferson could be in line for kind of a signature game of his own at Lambeau Field as well.
You guys have kind of said it for me, and all the reasons why I'm leaning the Vikings in this one in a big way, which is surprising for me. But every once in a while, I'll admit I go a little haywire with my predictions and just decide to throw everything, just decide to throw caution to the wind and just make a wild, bold prediction. And I think that's what I'm doing here, mainly because it is the Packers. And as a person who's lived in this state for this long, I'm not a fan of them, and I want to see them get beat every time that the Vikings play them. And I'm willing to say it, and you guys have laid out all the points. I think Aaron Jones has a big game returning to Lambeau, a place he called home for 7 years. He's looked really good with the Vikings through 3 weeks. I think they continue to build off of that. I think that gives the Vikings a little bit more balance and allows them to kind of just manipulate defenses a little bit better than they have in the past. I think that only beating the Colts by 6 points, a team that you should, if you're supposedly a really good team, you should beat them by more. Congratulations, you beat the Titans by 16. Every team in the league should be doing that because the Titans are just really bad at football this year. I'm not impressed by those two victories. You kept it semi close with the Eagles in Brazil, which is always just a weird situation, but
Yeah.
I haven't really like the defense turning or causing so many turnovers. That's impressive for sure because of the turnaround that they've had. I still don't think they match up with the Vikings that well on Sunday, and I'm going Vikings 28, Packers 7.
So, guys, the Vikings have shut down Debo Samuel, and I know Samuel had 8 catches for 110 yards, but they pretty much shut down that dynamic duo with him and Ayuk in San Francisco. They shut down the trio with the Houston Texans and Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell for the most part. Malik Neighbors looks like a football god, right? He looks like a football god. He didn't do that much against the Vikings.
Yeah.
How is Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs going to come in here and steal this show and find the secret sauce against this defense? I just don't see it. I love Jaden Reed. I really do. I know, Will, we talked before the season started, and you're like, these Packers receivers are pretty good. They have good depth. There's 5 of them, that can go out there and play, Christian Watson
young.
included. Sure, but I just don't see if you're shutting down the better elite 1-2 punches in the NFL, how this squad is going to get it done. I mean, we don't even talk about Stephon Gilmore or Shaq Griffin, right? Like, and there's a reason for that. They're not allowing anybody to talk about them because there's nothing thrown their way. I mean, it's an unbelievable success story so far for this Vikings secondary. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I don't see it happening.
I will say I like you pointed out, I'm pretty high on these Packers receivers, especially Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs. I don't think Christian Watson is particularly impressive, but I think Reed and Dobbs will get some numbers in this game with Jordan Love. I mean, we saw like Diggs and Debo Samuel. Those guys have put up some pretty solid numbers against the Vikings, but what the Vikings do is they really stiffen on third down in the red zone. They'll hold you to field goals. They'll force takeaways. They'll come away with sacks. And I think they'll do some more of that against the Packers team where the offensive line doesn't really jump out to me. I mean, the right tackle, Zach Tom, I learned this week, hasn't allowed a pressure all year.
Yeah.
I think that's a safe lock to change against Jonathan Grenard on Sunday. The other tackle, I think, is Rasheed Walker. The David Bakhtiari days are long gone. He's okay. I think Andrew Van Ginkel, he played at Wisconsin. He's from the Midwest. He's never played at Lambeau Field before. I'm looking for the Gink to have himself another game, which it seems like he does every week because he's just a ridiculous, like, designed in a lab Brian Flores football player. So I just the depth of the Vikings defense. I do think my prediction's 30-24. I do think the Packers score some points. With Jordan Love coming back, I really have a lot of respect for Matt LaFleur as a coach. I think he's right there in the O'Connell tier of some of the best offensive minds in the league. But ultimately, I think the Vikings are going to score a lot of points. I think Sam Darnold's going to have a big game. I think Jones, Jefferson, Jordan Addison coming back, Jalen Naylor. Like, I think the Vikings are going to move the ball on this Packers defense, assuming that they don't let Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt, the defensive tackles, kind of wreck the game. I think the Vikings score a lot of points, and I just think they're the better team, and it wouldn't shock me if something like Jonathan's blowout happened, having watched the Vikings play this season. But I do think that the Packers are going to hang in this game, and the Vikings will win by 1 score.
You mentioned the name that concerns me the most, and we talked about him yesterday in yesterday's 5 key matchups. Kenny Clark, 8 sacks in 16 games against the Vikings all time. He is the thing that concerns me and the thing that could kind of blow up my blowout prediction. And so I want to steal a bit from Matthew Collar here. Talk me into that not being the case on Sunday. Talk me into the fact that the Vikings could potentially hold up well against this Vikings defensive line, or this Packers defensive line, excuse me.
Yeah, what I would say is Kenny Clark's good, but he's not Dexter Lawrence, and the
Amen.
Vikings, despite Dexter Lawrence playing one of the best games you'll see all season, the Vikings still rolled over the Giants. I think you can really mess up a game as a defensive tackle, but there are also ways for an offense to get around that. And I think the Vikings learned their lesson probably in week one. And we'll see, some help, some running back chips, things like that. Move a tight end in. Like you just, I think the Vikings will be able to, as part of their game plan, understand and be wary of the potential mismatches on the interior and figure out ways to get the ball out of Sam Darnold's hands quickly, to use Aaron Jones going sideline to sideline and getting him in space. And I think Clark and Wyatt will probably have some moments in this game, maybe a sack or two, but I don't think it'll be enough to totally throw off a Vikings offense that's kind of been rolling.
I can't add anything to that. I mean, you said it. They've done well against. Well, I'm not going to say they did well against Dexter Lawrence. The man is like top 3 in the NFL in pressures, and he plays defensive tackle. It's insane. But Javon Hargrave in week number 2, I don't even know who the Texans defensive tackles are, but they didn't do much. So they've had success the last few weeks, and I think with growing confidence that the play only gets better. Yeah, Kenny Clark's going to blow up a few against Garrett Bradbury and Ed Ingram, no question about it. Devontae Wyatt as well, but yeah, it's not going to be enough. By the way, the forecast in Green Bay on Sunday: sunny with a high near 75, winds out of the northeast 7 to 10, gusting 15 to 20. So maybe a little wind to deal with, but other than that, smooth sailing at Lambeau Field.
I wish they could open up the press box there and have it.
You're going to be there.
Open air. I will be there, and it's a closed off press box, which I wish they had some way to open the windows and let me feel the breeze and the Lambeau air. But it'll be cool to be there nonetheless, and to see what happens on Sunday.
Are they just gonna have like a cheese curd bucket for the meal for the press? Is that what they serve out?
They typically, I've been a few times to cover it. They have brats, which is on brand.
Yeah, fits.
I don't know. I don't remember if they have curds, but
hey, let's just hope they get the sign fixed. I don't know if you guys saw this on social media this week, but the Titletown sign, well, the L and the E were out, and it was Tit Town.
No.
So no. I mean, time to do a little maintenance there at Lambeau.
That's good. I did not see that somehow.
Yeah, it was a thing.
I think that's.
I saw it.
I will speak on behalf of our Vikings on SI friends, staffers who are not in this video right now, but Nolan O'Hara has the Vikings winning.
Oh, he came around.
24 to 17.
Tony's the big one. He has not predicted a win yet.
Tony Liebert has picked a Vikings loss every week. He was the only one who picked a loss against the Giants. He was one of 3. Joe and I were the only ones who picked wins over the Niners and Texans. I don't know if this is Tony's genuine belief or if he's doing it out of a bit or superstitious reasons, but he has Packers 27, Vikings 20 this week, citing their depth at wide receiver and versatility on defense in his little summary. So
this is, by the way, the first loss I had in my preseason predictions. I had the Vikings starting 3-0 and then falling at Green Bay. I imagine that Jordan Love was fully healthy, and at the time I made that prediction, I wasn't aware that quarterbacks had no idea what the Vikings were doing until the ball was snapped. That has significantly altered my view of how dominant Minnesota can be, and therefore my pick has changed.
How much do we think Jordan Love's injury status will play into this match? Because as we've talked about and has been noted several times already this season, the Vikings defense is harassing quarterbacks. It's hard to read. It's impossible to read until after the snap. And he's coming off a fairly significant injury that hampered him and didn't allow him to play the past 2 weeks. And he's not 100%, as has been noted by the Packers and Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. He's not coming into this game 100%. How much is that going to play into the game on Sunday?
It doesn't help. That's for sure. When you're playing this Vikings defense and the disguises and the aggressiveness and all that, like you'd like to be under 100%. You'd like to be able to move around a little bit in the pocket and maybe get out of the pocket and scramble a little bit. And we'll see how much he's able to do that. Adrenaline can be quite the thing on Sundays for NFL players, and maybe a little injection of something that the league allows to numb the pain. But we'll see. Well, I don't think the league allows that one unless you're Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't think he cares.
True. Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. I think the Vikings would certainly rather face Malik Willis in this game, who's been impressive as a dual threat against a couple bad teams, but is still there's just very little track record of him as a successful passer. They'd rather face him, to be clear, than an 85-90% Jordan Love, because Jordan Love established himself as a top 10 quarterback with the season he put together last year. So we'll see. It'll be a challenge. I think Love's really good, but I mean, Love himself admitted this week that this Brian Flores defense, it is hard to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And if CJ Stroud looked the way he did last year, I think Stroud's a better quarterback than Love, or at least close.
Yeah.
So I don't know how. I don't see a situation where Love comes into this game and just tears up the Vikings defense. I just think
Yeah.
they're too good and too well coached for that.
I will say Love is probably one of the more cerebral quarterbacks in the NFL who's able to diagnose what defenses are doing. But again, that pre-snap inability is just so big. And I don't know what the education system in the academia is like at Liberty University, but I got a feeling if Malik Willis is under center and Brian Flores gets his hands on him, we might be looking at a shutout for the Vikings defense.
And it's a fair point that if I think we're all expecting Love to play based on the media buzz, but you come into that game and you're maybe one awkward step or tackle or something away from being right back out of the game. Not that the Vikings will be intentionally doing anything like that, but it's football.
They're not the Saints.
They're not the 2009 Saints. But if you're not fully healthy, then it's just a fact that the risk of re-injury is a little higher. So
right.
Yeah, I don't think Malik Willis would be well suited to handle this defense at all.
No, absolutely not. 4 wins across the board. Tony continuing the bit and saying that there's going to be a loss this weekend.
I'm kind of glad Tony did that. I don't want to. It feels off if we were to be 5-0 on the Vikings.
Don't do it.
I'm never comfortable.
Will, do you have a couch behind you?
I do not.
Go lay down. Let me talk to you. This is trauma again. Your ego has acted up on you, and you don't even realize it. Your brain doesn't know it's 2024. Things have changed.
All right.
Well, with that therapy session, I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
We will talk to Minnesota sports fans later. Tune back into this channel. Do hit subscribe. It does help us get found and does notify you every time we post a new video here on the channel. Go read everybody's work over at Vikings, Twins, Timberwolves, Gophers, and Badgers on SI. We cover it all for you, and we'll be back later with another video.